Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Terriers Talk. We're going to be previewing Leicester City on this episode. It is being filmed on the same day as the review of Plymouth and Borough, so if anything happens magically in the next 24 hours of the club, that will be touched upon in the next video. If not, a completely different video entirely if it's massive news. But anyways, Leicester both going. I feel that's just the great starter now. Are we going? We both are. It's a it's a horrible game to face after these first two games, isn't it? Really?
There's not a bigger challenge, is there?
Nah.
Once Premier League big boys, Premier League winners. We all remember Wes Morgan lifting the trophy, Ranieri with tears in his eyes. Being serenaded by Andrea Bocelli that magical day against Everton when they lifted the league, and now they're here at Huddersfield Town again. Yeah, it's one of them where you think, oh dear. But to be fair, I do think it is probably the best time to play them.
Bold statement.
I'm not looking forward to it. However, it's probably one of the best times to play them because a lot's happened this summer at Leicester.
Yeah.
You've got new managers, new coaching staff, new managers. There's one manager, Enzo Maresca. New coaching staff, new players. Big players have left. We'll touch on this as we continue this episode, but it's a big change, and no doubt they'll travel well. They'll be expected to win quite convincingly. I think everyone knows that. But strange things have happened. I think it's we've started off in the most interesting way possible, really, because we've gone from Plymouth newly promoted to the other end of the spectrum with Leicester who've just been relegated and have world class players, world class training facilities, or did have world class players rather. And it will be a massive test for Town and Neil Warnock, and it'll be a test of character. First home game. Let's just hope it doesn't turn out like the 5-1 game against Fulham and everyone goes a bit mental.
I think whatever happens, people are going to go a bit mental regardless, to be honest,
Yeah.
because you either lose and it's three losses from three, or you win or you get a point, and it's like, right, okay, this is the kickstart point. So
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything away from that. If we get anything against Leicester, it will be seen as a kickstart point, hopefully.
It'll be a miracle,
But
there.
it's a massive challenge. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities that I feel you can draw between us and Leicester at the moment in terms of things. Not financially, of course, but we're both entering different eras of the club. You know, Leicester.
Yeah.
I think it's best to touch on this now. Leicester sold Harvey Barnes, James Maddison for an absolute whopping fee between the pair of them. We've got 90 million euros written here, so it's probably about 75, 80 million quid for the pair of them.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's
So
a
they've got
lot
all
of
that money
money.
coming into the club, and they're two of their probably longest standing players that you can really remember. Um, Two players that really struggle to think of anywhere but Leicester.
Mm.
So they've got that. So there's a massive rebuild going on. They've got Enzo Maresca. They've got a project going on,
Yeah.
and obviously we're about to enter a project. I won't say we're in that project yet. It's a turnaround season, so it's not there. But I think there's a similarity that can be drawn there, where both clubs have something going for them and something to be excited about again. Because Leicester struggled a lot last season, so to come back down to be completely not rebuilt, but to a lot of the club to be redone over summer.
It's a restructure, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
restructuring it bodes really well for them. They've spent money, they've sold players for money, and yeah, things look really good at Leicester. And then you come to us, and things look a bit doom and gloom after 3 games, don't they? Really?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's
Three
it's
games.
probably a very exciting time to be a Leicester fan. I mean, even though they are in the Championship, you're spending £10 million on Harry Winks, established Premier League midfielder, £9 million or euros on Connor Cody, which is an absolutely brilliant signing.
Yeah.
You've still got a very established back line. You've got Wout Faes, who I remember did have or scored one of the best own goals I've ever seen last season, but that was probably just Leicester last season.
From another Huddersfield
Um,
fan, that is a mad comment considering Janini Bakuna.
Junior Bakuna at
Yeah.
Stoke, yeah, Junior, if you're watching, wow, well done. €7.5 on Madavidi, new keeper they brought in. So they've spent around 30, 35 million euros, or probably 25, 30 million quid this window, which is incredible.
Yeah.
I
But then you
mean,
also add into the fact that they've got Harry Suter, Ricardo Pereira,
ridiculous depth.
Kane Dewsbury all, and then just to top it off, just three strikers available of Patson Daka, Kelechi Iheanacho, and
And
Jamie Vardy. Just
just Jamie Vardy, yeah, it's all
Jamie Vardy. It's a worrying prospect,
right.
isn't it?
It is, and I think the way we've started off and the way we've not been able to defend really at all, conceded 6 goals in 2 games. It's going to be a massive, massive test. I mean, let's talk about it strategically. I think what Warnock will do, and I'll be very surprised if he doesn't do this, he will probably sit in as much as possible, make sure
Yeah.
we're very structured, very regimented, because we haven't been. I think that's one thing we got to focus on. They're a tough side, and it'll probably feel at times, most of the time, that they're playing at home and we're playing away.
Yeah.
I really think we'll sit in. I think we'll put as many players behind the ball as possible, and when we spring into action, we'll throw the kitchen sink at it. I think it'll be a performance quite reminiscent to Millwall away last season, where we won the game 1-0 on
Yeah.
29% possession, and it was one chance we offset that chance. Famously, the phrase is. Um, am I looking forward to it? No. Am I? Is there a slight glimmer of hope in the back of my mind? Yes, because it'd be quite typical to go down to Plymouth, lose 3-1, lose 3-2 at Borough at home, and then roll over Leicester.
Yeah.
That's the Town thing to do. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a really big test of character, and it'll be a gauge of where we are compared to teams that have dominated the Premier League and where we want to be, really.
Yeah, 100%. I think thing with Leicester as well is they're quite an unknown force. So how they're going to set up against a Warnock side will be different. And obviously because we've only had one game so far against Coventry of how they've set up, Coventry and us will be very different sides to play against.
Yeah,
So there's no idea kind of how Enzo Maresca is going to look at the side and go, yeah, I want to set you up this to counter what Warnock's going to try and do. Because realistically, who realistically knows what Warnock's going to do
yeah.
with our
No,
lineup on
no, exactly.
Saturday? There's the idea that from my perspective anyway, and I think it's probably a decent enough time as ever to speak about a lineup. Um, on the topic of how to go against Leicester, I think you've surely got to go back to a five for this game, haven't you? Instead
Yeah,
of playing a four, just for
completely.
that defensive structure, and then you've also got to, in my opinion, have either Hogg or Edmonds Green sitting in front of them, because
Yeah,
I know it's not exactly throwing the kitchen sink at things, but Leicester are a team where, on paper anyway, they will pick you apart very happily and very easily if you let them. So you need to close down as much as you can, really, and
completely,
defend and then hit on
completely.
the break.
I mean, I'm just looking at their midfield from the previous game against Coventry. So you've got a midfield three of Wilfred and Ndidi, Harry Winks, and is it Kieran Dewsbury Hall? Kieran
Yeah,
Dewsbury Hall? KDH, let's just call him that. That midfield three, if they faced up against our midfield at Plymouth, would rip us to absolute pieces.
yeah,
I think my main worry um, right now, apart from being a good football side, more specifically, is the defence in the midfield. I mean, the midfield really surprised me against Plymouth, or the lack of midfield.
yeah,
And I think if we turn up and put in the same effort levels, the same intensity against Leicester, it will be a cricket score. Because you look in front of them and you've got Madvididi, McAteer, and Jamie Vardy up front.
yeah,
So it's not getting much easier at all. So structure, I think I'm going to reiterate it, structure and fight and grit. And I think that's one player, that's Johnny Ogg.
yeah,
We saw when he came on against Plymouth, he was putting himself about, he was making tackles, he was breaking up play, he was jumping in, he was linking play. He was doing all the things you'd associate with Johnny Og.
Yeah.
So him or someone who can perform like him is going to be absolutely vital on Saturday rather. And if we don't have any of that and they take it to us early, I fear it's not going to be pretty viewing. And I think a good litmus test of any football side is how they can perform at home, especially how they can perform at the first game of the season at home. Because as well as I do, everyone turns up. We're back at the John Smiths. You make your walk, you buy your pint, you meet the people who you haven't seen for what feels like absolutely years. You take your seat and you think, here we go again. We do need to start strongly, but as we keep saying, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, the midfield's something that I wanted to touch on, and it's something where I feel like we're missing David Kasumu
Yeah,
massively.
completely, completely.
Everyone knows what Kasumi brings to the table, and I feel like having somebody like that in there instead of a Diarra, who hasn't been 100% so far this season. I don't think it's unfair to say that. Um, hasn't looked fully on it, which is probably due to just it being early in the season. Just
That's
hasn't,
just him as a player, though. To be fair,
it's the balance as well of that midfield. Having Radoni, who's typically a 10, and Diarra, who's again typically a 10 or even a winger, and then having just one base midfielder doesn't really
it's not
contribute
enough.
well. You have a midfield of Hogg, Kasumu, and Radoni or Diarra,
No
and
Diarra, yeah.
that looks so much better structurally because you're going to have two people in there that aren't reliant on going forward all the time, like having Radoni and Diarra would be, because you saw on Saturday that Radoni would often sit back and it would be Edmonds Green who was actually doing the pressing high up the pitch, which it was a bit baffling at the time because
Yeah,
like
I agree.
why was your sitter of the midfield three going forward and pressing as high, which didn't really make sense when Radoni or Diarra could have done that pressing, and if they'd have got the chance like Diarra did, then maybe could have got a chance away from it. So I think missing Kasumu for this game is obviously a big one. And then I'm going to pose the question to you of, instead of Diarra, would you then potentially start either a Scott High, have a Reg in there and have Reg and Hogg playing together, or even Josh Osterfield, who's brought up a few questions against Borough?
I think if it was um, anyone other than Leicester or a team who had been recently relegated, I'd probably say yes. I think the one player who I'd maybe stick in there with Hoggy is Reg, and he probably will start. But I agree, you need those two sitting midfielders, especially against Leicester. I don't think it's a game to take risks and throw Osterfield in there. No disrespect to him, but that midfield he'd be facing is unbelievably more established than any player he's seen in his football career, and it's only a very short career. However, it's not the game.
No,
And this is where you need someone like Kasumu who probably makes up for his, I'm not going to say lack of technical ability, but you get what I mean.
it's not his prominent feature, is it?
Yeah, no, but his work rate makes up for it because if Kasumu didn't have an engine, he'd probably still be with MK Dons or even lower. But because he's absolutely mental and will put himself into any tackle whatsoever, and like Hoggy does, it makes up for it and it makes it effective. I agree he's going to be a big miss, and we'll just have to see. I mean, I'm not confident, but we'll have to see how it goes. But talking of confidence, we asked both sets of fans,
Yeah,
and we got let's start with Leicester. So David French says that he's fairly confident and hopeful, but lots of work on the training ground and new transfers still needed. I mean, David, if Huddersfield Town has spent £34 million in one transfer window, I won't be saying transfers are needed, but fair play.
but equally, it's a bigger thing in it as well. Like if
Exactly, yeah,
you can look at it from both perspectives, because I think from Leicester fans' perspective, I believe it's well known that they've been in financial issues towards the end of last season, and that's why they didn't really bring anybody in, and that's why I
yeah.
think Rodgers wasn't sacked earlier because of them financial issues.
Mm.
That there's been things like that. So if the training ground's been neglected for a while and not but had the money that was put in was promised or something like that, maybe that's obviously a big thing. I mean, Leicester's
Well,
training facility.
that was the Harry Maguire money,
Yeah,
wasn't it? 80 million, unbelievable
the
facilities.
training facilities are ridiculous. I mean, we're not going to become a training facilities podcast here, but they are something of a spectacle, aren't they? And then
Yeah,
if they need a few more transfers, then they may as well look at what, for example, Burnley did last year, and how much criticism they got for it on the face of things. But they played it really smart. They invested money into a Premier League ready player,
yeah.
and did well for it. So it makes sense. Obviously, you can look at it from our perspective of 4 million would be lovely being spent right now.
A
For
million, yeah,
yeah. So
a pound.
there's two sides to the story, isn't there? Really?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I'll just find a comment, and it kind of exemplifies what I said earlier about this might be the best time to play us, bit me in Leicester. John Wright says it's early days in terms of the team implementing the manager's ideas. Defensively, we were exposed on Saturday by Coventry and Rodar Luck. So early in the season is probably a good time to play us. As in time, I think we will become much more fluid up front and harder to beat. So
100%.
I think there's a general consensus among Leicester fans that it is a process. With
Yeah.
any team, it's a massive process. I think a manager takes over, you lose your star players. It's going to be a process. So
100%.
it probably is the best time to play them, but that's by no means saying that they're going to be a weak outfit because we know they're not going to be.
I don't want to compare Leicester to Burnley again, but you look at the Burnley score from the first game of last season was 1-0. We were brilliant, but we didn't
We were
flatter
battered,
them.
weren't we? Yeah,
And then second game of the season, it's 4-0, and it looked so much worse that game compared to the first game at home. So you've got to take perspective into these kind of things. So I think, like you say, there's never going to be a good time to play Leicester probably this year. But playing them first game at home for us is probably going to be as good a time as any really to do so. So
yeah,
I agree with it fully. Really,
yeah,
it's going to take time for them to implement that new style because obviously it's you'd imagine very similar to Guardiola's football. So I don't think I'm unfairly saying that. But yeah, it's going to
yeah.
be a difficult opposition to say the least, in it really.
It will. And let's look at. We've just got a few comments from the Huddersfield side. This is Declan after yesterday's performance. So defensive errors cost us again today, i.e., the game against Borough. We're stupid to take a red card so early in the game whilst being a goal up. Like the look of Osterfield Hudlin needs to start too. I think it'll be a tough game against top quality players. 1-1, or they'll nick it 2-1. And another comment, Oliver says 4-0 win up the town. We can only hope.
Speaking of players like that, then Osterfield and Hudlin, what would you start? What would your starting lineup be for Saturday if we're going to go through it?
Oh, gosh. Um, Obviously, Nichols in net. I
Yeah,
think Pearson is fit, if I'm not mistaken.
should be I think, but obviously we'll get a
Uh,
press conference tomorrow.
Pearson, Hellick, uh, Ruffles, maybe.
Do you not throw Nakayama in there?
I wouldn't yet.
All right,
I wouldn't yet. And then you've got, I'm not sure about Tom Edwards.
all right.
But who else we got?
Sauber.
Really?
If you're playing a five back,
You,
I'd play Sauber deeper.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but I just think whatever team we do feel it's going to be a tough day out. I
Yeah,
mean, definitely up front there is a large striker by the name of Carl Hudley knocking on the door. I think he might be
yeah.
close to banging the door down. Do you throw him in from the start?
Personally, no. Um, I think right now I'd say Harrott nicks it.
Yeah,
And I'd maybe say Harrott and Ward, if not Harrott and Karoma.
Karoma. Yeah,
Um, everyone knows Ward went brilliant on Saturday. Um, I don't think anybody can sit here and say Ward was brilliant. I don't think Ward would say he was brilliant. Um, but I think that playing him alongside Harrott might be different. Or playing Harrott alongside Karoma. I think the front two, if we're going to play a 5-3-2, would be the most difficult to sit here and say this
yeah,
player should start, this player should start. And I think it's probably a lot easier to do a defence. But even then, there's players that you could put an argument forward for. Tom Edwards, Sorba Thomas. Do you maybe
Swabber.
even look at Brodie Spencer playing right centre half if Pearson's not ready? We just had the Nakayama debate. Ruffles. It's a tough one to call.
So early in the season as
Yeah,
well.
but an even tougher one to call. I'm going to ask you your score prediction.
I knew
You,
you were
you
gonna do
hit me
this.
with it last time, Sam. I'm hitting you with
Yeah, only
score
fair.
prediction.
I think we will score.
All right.
However, I think Leicester will score three. So 3-1 Leicester.
I think it'll be. I'm going to say 2-1 Leicester, but it'd be very Huddersfield Town if it was to be 1-0 Town after riding our luck for a while. But the thing is if we do play a five back and you have Ruffles and Sorba in those wing back positions, I think we can break at least once and get a chance away.
Yeah, it's whether we take
You've
that
got to put your
chance.
foot in the
Yeah.
door early on, haven't you? Really, that's the big thing. If you can kind of come out and shock them a little bit from the off, then it's just kind of a case of building on that.
Well, yeah,
Which is what
completely.
which is exactly what Plymouth did with us. Like they hit us early on the break and then built on it.
Yeah,
When we did it, we just didn't do the same.
yeah, and conversely, it's what we did against Borough last season. Second half,
Yeah,
came out and scored within 40 seconds, I think it was. So if we do choose to be aggressive, and I don't think we will, I think we will choose to be aggressive as we counter. I think being aggressive from the start against Leicester is only going to get us absolutely whooped. But yeah, I mean, I think every single Warnock team and every single Warnock style of play is going to be hard to predict. But yeah, we've just tried to predict that, and I think there's not much more to say other than it's going to be a very tough day, and fingers crossed.
but equally, I think I'm glad that we have Warnock in charge for it because I think
Oh yeah,
Warnock will know exactly what he wants to do from the off.
yeah,
He'll know what he wants to do
he
two
knows.
weeks
Yeah,
ago,
yeah,
how to stop them. So I'm looking forward to it.
I can't
I
say
don't,
the
I don't,
same,
I
but
don't think anybody would say the same, but I'm looking forward to seeing
no.
how we cope with Leicester because, like you say, it's a good gauge of seeing where we are against one of the better sides in the division on paper. So yeah, and I think that's pretty much everything, and that wraps us up for this week. So we shall see you for the review of Leicester. Obviously, if there's any major news that comes out in the next few days, we can obviously maybe do another episode. But yeah, that has been all for this one. Thank you as always for listening, and please like and share it. And give us your score predictions as well below either the tweet or the YouTube, whatever. But yeah, we shall see you next time. And as always, thank you for listening.